Welcome to your favorite program, Healthy Conversations. I'm your host for this program, and my name is Pastor Philip Gai. In this program, we talk about health, and health all the time, because we want you to live vibrant health. We want you to get to optimum health. We want you to be happy and to enjoy longevity as long as God gives you life. And to help us come to speed on the things that we need to know, we have our guest in studio. This is Dr. Danny Hong. Dr. Hong, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Hong is a consultant physician with many years of experience and currently works at Kindu Adventist Hospital as the Chief Medical Officer. He's had experience on serving in the United States of America, in other parts of Africa, and even here in Kenya. And we're glad that the Lord is using him to bring to us the information that we so much need, even as we serve in our various capacities. And today, we'll continue in the second part of the discussion that we had previously on obesity. We actually came to learn the causes of obesity. We came to learn how to calculate our body mass index. We also were able to learn about some of the misconceptions that people have about big body mass. And today, we're just going to dig a little deeper to know what else we need to do on how to work out on obesity so that we get the right body mass for our height or for our size. So, Dr. Hong, just to start us off, can obesity be reversed?
Yes. So, I tell my patients that you didn't become this weight overnight. So it took some time for you to get here. It may not happen immediately, but we can take time to get back to where you're supposed to be and where you want to be.
Now, when your patients come to the hospital and they look for a solution to obesity, do you have a cure for it? Do you have a pill that you give them like you give other drugs, like take 2-3 times a day for the next 1 week? Is there a pill for obesity?
So there are some medications that I don't recommend using because the way that they lose weight is not so healthy. So they lose weight by preventing the body from absorbing the food, and that leads to frequent diarrhea, getting rid of all the oil and from that you're eating. So that's not the healthiest way because we don't want them to eat and also have diarrhea. Instead, what we do is we control the amount of food and the type of food that they're eating. So what I usually tell my patients is, usually when they're so big, they're not able to exercise because they have severe joint pains and they're not able to move around freely. So I tell them, I say, before exercising, we must first get you slimmer so that you can free up this excess baggage around your body so you can have more mobility. And the way they do that is through their nutrition practices.
Someone actually asked me one day that, can I be able to reduce my weight without exercise? So are you saying that it's actually possible to reduce weight with other means without having to exercise?
Yes, actually, exercise is helpful for maintaining a good body weight. But in terms of losing the weight, the most effective way is by decreasing the amount of food that we're eating. So by limiting the intake, that severely will reduce our weight.
So would you say that exercise is a bad way of trying to reduce weight? Because I've also heard of situations where people try to reduce weight by going to the gym or going jogging for long distances, and when they come up out of this, they end up eating more. Are we saying that this type of style of reducing weight is one that just doesn't work, or what are we saying?
So exercise has so many health benefits. Okay. So I would never say that it's not useful. However, if you want to be more effective at losing weight, it's not the most effective way. But exercise is very, very helpful and useful in controlling many, many diseases. But for weight specifically, if they want to be very effective and targeted at losing it, the best way is by controlling what they're eating.
So we are not actually discouraging exercise because, as we have seen earlier, exercise is good for preventing many of these other diseases.
Yes, I would never discourage exercise.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hong. Now let's get to the bottom line. What are these other best practices that you recommend for someone who would want to reduce their weight?
So the two things is to eat a certain quantity and eat a certain quality. So quality meaning what types of foods. So usually I ask them, first, I say, what types of food are you eating at home? Because I want to get a sense of what their normal routine is. Because instead of me telling them, you don't eat this, you don't eat that, you don't eat this, at the end of the day, they'll go home and eat nothing, you know? So what I try to do is I see what foods they're eating, And then I pick some things that are not healthy and I replace them with healthy things.
Okay.
Yeah, so we always try to substitute good for bad, or we try to substitute better for things that are lesser. So for example, if they're eating lots of meat, I say, instead of eating meat, can we substitute that with a bowl of beans? Or can we substitute that with something else, like some fresh serving of fruits? So we try to always substitute and provide them with practical ways. And we also want to look at the regional availability of foods. It wouldn't be practical for me to suggest a food that's not available in that resource, in that region.
That's what I was wondering, you know, when you look at the plate of food that they have and there's this type of food, and let me just give an example of someone who lives along the lake. They would probably be feasting on omena on, you know, on a more constant basis. When you want to replace that with something else, do you care whether that which you want to replace it with is commonly available, or they'll have to travel a long distance in order to get that other substitute, which probably they might not afford?
Yes, so health shouldn't be something that only the rich and only the people in cities can afford. So it should be accessible for everyone.
Yes.
So if there's omena there and I say, please substitute it with your local variety of beans. So and along the people that usually who live in the lake, their favorite type is called green grams, which is also a mung bean. So I say, why don't you use this one instead, and you can do a 1-for-1 serving swap. And actually the beans are the best ways. The beans are best ways because they have so much fiber that it makes you full for a long period of time, so that prevents you from overeating. So there are a couple of techniques and strategies for preventing overeating. One is that if you substitute the food with more fiber content, you stay satiated for a longer period of time, which means you feel satisfied.
Sure, sure.
Also, chewing very, very slowly really, really helps. When you chew slowly, your body is able to really digest slowly, and then you're able to signal your brain, the stomach signals some chemicals that says, it's time to stop, I've had enough. But you know, when we overeat that signal and we eat at a very fast pace and we don't chew our food, then we tend to overeat and that signal does not get sent in time. And by the time it's sent, we've already finished our plate.
Thank you. Now, in trying to overcome the challenge of obesity, is there such a thing as willpower? Because I've seen people try to overcome obesity, they get some miles ahead and they relapse. And I don't know, is there such a thing as willpower that comes into effect when trying to put in place strategies for overcoming obesity?
Yes. You know, each patient is so different and so individualized. Some of them may have a very strong will. I tell them to stop smoking, they stop and they never go back again. But the reality is that most of us are very weak. And we know this as Christians, that when we have a sinful world, because we are born in a world of sin. Absolutely. So I would like to share with you these Bible verses. So this first one says in Ecclesiastes 10:17.
Ecclesiastes 10:17?
Yes, Ecclesiastes 10:17. It says, "Blessed art thou, when thy king is a son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season, for we eat in strength and not for drunkenness."
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes, so we're eating, and this is not drinking for drunkenness. It refers not to alcohol, but it refers to earthly satisfaction. God has given us senses so that we can really control our appetite. We should not let our appetites control us.
Sure.
You know, there's a saying, it says, please eat to live, not live just to eat.
Sure.
You know, we're eating so that that food can help us so that we can live long. But if the food is what we're living for, and if that food is the only thing that's keeping us what we're living for, and that's giving us satisfaction and meaning, then, you know, if they're not having that food in their mouth, there's no void of meaning. So I give them that verse and I tell them that they should be in control of their appetite.
Sure.
Another verse that I really promise and I claim to my patients is found in Isaiah 40:29.
Isaiah 40:29.
Yes, Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29. And it says that he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Because at the end of the day, we're all weak. We all struggle.
Sure.
You know, these temptations of food, it's not just for my patients. My coworkers, my fellow medics, my nurses, we all have the same temptations. You know, it's if you put the same piece of cake in front of everybody, I'm sure everybody has different variation of temptation, but at the end of the day,
would want to grab a slice of the cake.
Yeah, so it's not their fault. And, you know, there are some people who are able to have stronger wills than others. We know this because some students are able to work more diligently than others.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that those undiligent or unsatisfied students cannot be raised to a place where they do well. We just have to encourage and motivate them to say, you must trust in the Lord to help you, because if you take hold of His will, He will empower you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doctor. We are still looking deeper into the curative factors for obesity. And some of the issues that I've had out there are some surgical procedures to be able to help with dealing with issues of obesity, like reducing the size of the stomach so that someone can eat a limited amount of food. What can you tell us about some of these things in terms of alleviating the obesity issue?
Yes. So people who are very obese, they can qualify for surgical procedures to alter their anatomy. As you recall, when the food enters our mouth, we chew and then it goes down a tube called the esophagus, which leads to the stomach.
Sure.
When it's finally in the stomach breaks the food down into smaller components and digests it with chemicals so that we can absorb that food. So there are some surgeries that have come out. It's called bariatric surgery.
Bariatric surgeries.
Yes, and what they do is that bariatric surgery limits the amount of food that we're coming into the body. So when you eat a smaller amount, you may feel more full, and it may limit the amount of intake. Or they may alter the food in a way so that the digestion is altered, so that the absorption is also altered. But you know, making life-changing alterations on the body is really not the ideal way. You know, when there are more conservative methods that can be done, we usually recommend those first, because making a cut and a change on the body has complications as well, and there are consequences, and some of them we hope our patients don't deal with, such as bleeding, such as also issues where they have to reverse the surgeries. So the best way is to really control the behavior and the appetite.
And how are we going to control behavior and appetite, Doc?
So it comes through practice, and there are strategies and tips that I give my patients. I say, you become good at doing something by practicing. So each day, practice limiting how much is in your plate. So don't take more than what you can, and don't go back for seconds. And you know, here, most people, we prefer to pray before eating. And what do we pray for? We pray that God will bless the meal, isn't it?
And give us good appetite.
Yes. So I say, please, my friend, let's change the way that we're praying. Dear Lord, we're walking through the valley of shadow and death. Please use your rod and your staff to comfort us, and cane us if must need be. Because sometimes we need God to waken us up and control us. You know, this food in front of us may not be a blessing for all. For some, it may be a curse. For some, it may lead to disease. So that prayer sometimes needs to be altered as well.
That's very interesting, Dr. Hong. I'm hearing that for the first time, that we need to alter our prayer before we actually attack the food. You're listening to Healthy Conversations, and this is a program where we discuss on health, and nothing but matters health. I'm your host for this program, always, Pastor Philip Gai, and today we have Dr. Hong, a senior consultant physician, helping us to come to speed on this particular disease called obesity. And we're trying to see how to get ourselves out of this menace, how to get a better life, how to get optimum health, how to be at peace with our body, with ourselves, and with our God. And thank you so much, Dr. Hong, for helping us know how to pray just before we consume our meals. Tell me about this obesity. And once someone gets cured or gets to the right body size, there are some fears, or there's some allegations that people have heard about those who have reduced their body size, that they have things like stretch marks, or their parts of their bodies turning black, or some dents on their parts of their body that doesn't just look beautiful, especially with ladies. What do you say about that?
So, you know, a lot of people perceive beauty differently. Sometimes you look at these magazines or the TV, and they have these models where they're so skinny. You know, I tell people that it's not about the way you look that I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on the way you feel and about your health. Because, you know, the health is not merely an outward appearance. Because as we've discovered that a lot of people may look healthy on the outside, but inside they're suffering. Health is a combination of what's inside the body. So I tell these people, I say, don't focus on the outward appearance, because at the end of the day, what you need to focus on is the inside, how you feel, and that will come out as well. But you know, there are valid concerns, because when people do lose weight, when the skin was expanded with the fat, and when they lose weight, there's contractures, which forms wrinkles. And that may be a point of concern for some people. And what I tell them is that the wrinkles can be toned up by exercise, because exercise really helps the muscles to become more firm, and it helps rejuvenate the skin. So that will help reduce some of that. But at the end of the day, there are some skin which, when it's loose, it may not be possible to completely get rid of cosmetically. For example, I've had some pregnant mothers who, after they've had twins or triplets, perhaps after they've given birth, their skin here isn't very stretched out.
Sure.
And there's really not a lot we can do for that. Yes. But we just counsel them that regardless of the way that you look, the most important thing is what you feel. And I don't target a certain appearance, but I target a certain number and a certain weight and these metrics. So when we do that, we are focusing less on the outside appearance, but we're focusing more on the inward appearance.
Okay, focusing on the inward rather than on the outside. Talking about obesity, there's this interesting point I've had people talk about, that someone may be thin on the outside or skinny but fat inside. I don't know what that means. Maybe on the outside they look like they're not that big, having that big body mass, but inside of their body there is some fatty tissues or things like that. What would you say about that? They are actually more at risk in their health than those who are big-bodied or having a big body mass.
Yes. So, the calculation of the body mass index, which is based on the weight and the height, is not perfect because we know that there are many different things that accumulate for weight. For example, fat is one component of weight, but there's also bone, there's also muscle, there's also fluid. So all those things add up to weight.
Sure.
So I can't say that this calculator is perfect because somebody who's very, very athletic and very built and dense and heavy with muscle, who doesn't have a lot of fat, they may still have a high BMI. So I would say that you have to take into those accounts when you're taking that feature. But usually fat, if you're fat on the inside, the fat has to come from somewhere. And usually that accumulation of fat is from the outside as well. Fat distributes differently depending on the person, but usually the organ fat around there, all the organs need some fat around there for protection, providing them with insulation and whatnot. But if it exceeds a certain healthy level, then that's what causes disease.
Now, there is this situation. I've also come across people who have had a big body mass in the past, and they've had to do some remedies to correct their situation, and they probably became skinny. And then they end up getting a relapse, and the body becomes big again, and then they try to do some things again, and then they become big again. What would you say on this relapse, on people who are really struggling, but they find themselves going back to what they don't want?
So we call that the yo-yo phenomenon. Do you know what a yo-yo is?
Yes.
So a long time ago, several decades, the children played with a yo-yo, which is a ball, and it was on a string, and it goes up and down. So the yo-yo phenomenon is when people, they lose their weight, and they bounce up again, they lose, it's kind of like a rubber band, it's stretching in and out. So that usually happens because of dieting fads. So a dieting fad is some kind of fashionable diet that they see this is very, very good. They do that diet, then they stop that diet, or they try this and they try that, or they purchase a gym membership and then they go very, very readily and they stop eating and then they stop that membership and they start eating again. So those things are a result of not being consistent with their dietary practices or their health lifestyle choices. When you're not consistent, then you'll go back to the way things were.
Okay. So it really calls for consistency. Once you've learned best practices, you keep on, and it becomes part and parcel of your lifestyle.
Yes, and this is a marathon. A lot of these health diseases that we're talking about and lifestyle changes we're making, you're not only investing for now, you're investing for decades down the line.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me, is there anything wrong with hitting the gym? One thing I hear commonly being said is that if you're struggling with big body mass, your colleagues, your friends will always advise you to hit the gym as a quick fix or a solution to this. Is there something inherently wrong with that, or is that the best way to go about it?
There's nothing wrong with going to the gym and exercising in itself, but there's something wrong when you go to the gym and then you feel like because you're exercising now, you deserve to eat more. So sometimes I see people after they exit the gym, they go to the ice cream store, they go grab some food, they say, I've worked hard, now I deserve this. And I think that perception is not a healthy way to think about it, because the reason why you're going to the gym is to maintain health and to reverse disease. So health is made up of many, many different components. So you cannot just slack in one area and expect to make up in another area. We should attack it in all different fronts.
Tell me about obesity and water. Some would actually say that if you take too much water, it also leads to a big body mass. And some would advise that if you're obese, then you need to take too much water to help cut out on some, chemicals or whatever fatty tissues. What's the best practice here? When you're obese, do you need to have a lot of intake of water?
So that's a very good question. And it's interesting because people who overeat are usually dehydrated. So when the body has thirst, they try to receive the water from any different source it can. So if all our foods has some amount of water, even the very, very dried things. So the body tries to pull all the water out. And if you're eating when you're dehydrated, then you'll tend to overeat because you're trying to extract as much water as you can. So what we typically advise patients is that when you hydrate yourself readily, and we try to hydrate the cells before eating, so we don't want to dilute the acid in the stomach. So we hydrate them an hour or two before eating, then that will help them so that they don't overeat as well. As far as the weight for the water, 1 kilogram of the weight is usually equivalent to 1 liter. So 1 liter of water, 1 kg of that. But the body has a very smart way of detecting when the water is increased, then the kidneys will filter out the water and you'll have more short gall. So it's not a closed system, meaning that we don't just put water in and it just stays in the box, but rather it's a cycle. So as water comes in, water goes out. And then we also replenish and replete that as well.
Now, coming back to an issue that you earlier talked about society. We have come to a situation where society kind of accepts everything, and there are these fashion shows and galas for people with different body sizes. There are actually shows for X plus size, and they want to display that, and it's the macho thing now. So, what do you think about these kinds of social structures that we have in our world today?
So I think that the world is becoming more and more politically enraged, where they're trying to accommodate for a wide variety of people. I've seen flyers and slogans saying big is beautiful, whatnot, bold is beautiful. And we have to maintain strict principles in saying that I'm not criticizing you because you're big, I'm not judging you because you're big, but we must be honest with each other and say that this bigness is actually a health risk, and this is a disease. So when I tell my patients, I say, you have a condition, it's a diagnosis, a disease, and that condition is called obesity. That condition is called overweight. So I don't make them feel bad about that. I say, this is a disease. Obesity is a disease like any other, like blood pressure.
Like malaria.
Like tuberculosis. It's a disease. So I say, this is your disease, and let's go about treating it together.
Okay.
It requires a different approach to treatment, but it still must be treated. So we shouldn't make light of it, even if the society is condoning it. We should still recognize it for what it is, which is a disease and a condition.
Thank you. Now, still staying on the society and particularly on the family, how can the immediate family and possibly even the extended family and the circle of family and friends be supportive to one of their own who is probably diagnosed or probably suffering from obesity as a disease, so that these people feel like they are supported, they are acceptable, they are not criticized, they are not maligned? How would society handle or tackle such a situation?
It's difficult because some of my closest friends around the Lake Simbi area, I still recall the mother when the daughter went to Canada and then she started losing weight. And then when they were video conferencing through WhatsApp, they were saying, my daughter, you're suffering so much because you've lost so much weight. And the daughter saying, no, I am losing weight because it's healthy. And I think it really requires the younger generation to really educate the older people, because this is something that maybe it requires a lot of difficult and change in the mindset and the mentality. And we just have to be patient. We say, they lived in a generation where food was not readily available. And so now that they have food and they have access to all this rich foods, they want to get as much as they can. So we need to be patient, understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, educate them. Say, no, mom, no, dad, this is different. This is not good for us. Studies have shown that this is unhealthy. Let's work together. And we just need to coach them through this. Our job is not to tell them what to do, but to coach them so that they may be able to make those decisions.
You remind me of when I started out as a young pastor out there. When you went out to a camp meeting and you are not that big-bodied pastor, people would look down upon you. They would ask that what kind of minister has been sent to us here from the conference, because they were used to a pastor being big-bodied and with a big stomach, and they would bring all sorts of foods during camp meeting and they expect you to eat all that. And when you touch just a little bit of that, they would feel insulted. They would feel like you didn't like their food, you didn't appreciate their courtesy. I don't know, how do we help such societies to understand that there is a different lifestyle to just being big. And being big is not really as macho as they think it is.
Yes. So I think things need to be done in a very loving way so people don't feel insulted. And I've experienced this when you go to someone's house and when you eat more, they feel loved. They feel like you're being a very, very good visitor and that they're being a good host. So, you take what you can and say, this food is so delicious, but I've eaten, this is how much I've been eating, and I'm full, So there's a way to do it, not to insult people, but also to do it with grace and dignity so people understand. Our job is not to shame people. Our job is not to make them feel bad about themselves. And our job is not to be superior to them and show them that we're good and we're enlightened. But we're all working toward the success and the health of everybody around us. So we just tell them that this is what I want to share with you. I have a health message, and this is what I believe that you would like to hear because I want you to experience health. So when they come to a place, they say, oh, this person cares about me and wants to share this healthy message, they're more ready to receive that. And it comes from, I think, also personal basis too.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Now, just to wrap it up, just one more time, I know you've said it, but just for the sake of my viewer, just look straight into that camera and tell my viewer, what do you do to handle the issue of obesity?
Yes. So I think, first of all, recognizing that obesity is a disease, it's nothing to be ashamed about, and it leads to a lot of health consequences. That's the first step. And the second step is knowing how you can change. Behavioral change is one of the most difficult things that we have to deal with, and I think that the first thing we must realize is we cannot do it alone. Having an accountability partner, having a support team, and most importantly, relying on a God who can overcome all things and gives us strength. If you have these, you will be successful, I promise.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Danny Hong helping us to come to speed with matters obesity. And this is your favorite program, Healthy Conversations. I have been your host, Pastor Philip Gai. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the next episode of Healthy Conversations as we talk about health, and nothing but matters health. Please talk to us from our Twitter handle, from our WhatsApp, from our Facebook page, from all the lines that have been open to you. Let's hear from you. Let's engage. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Stay right there. Keep it Hope Channel. Thank you and God bless you.